All right, so for this week's guitar lesson, we have a really cool sounding slow country lead that you're going to love, and it's got a lot of open space in it and some really cool bendy pedal steel kind of licks, and it's all played using the chord shapes from the CAGED system to navigate your way around the fretboard. So if you've ever wondered how to use the CAGED system to play lead, you're going to love this lesson. So here's what it sounds like. Okay, so we're going to break this down note for note, and I'll explain where all the notes come from so that you can use them when you're jamming and you're improvising. That's really the idea behind this lesson and all these lessons, not to just memorize how to play a lead, but really understand why the notes are working. That'll make you a much better player. Really, memorizing doesn't get you much of anything other than maybe a little technique. So I've got this lesson split into two parts. In this video, we're going to go through the first half. If you'd like to join us for the part 2 video, download the tablature and also the MP3 jam track so that you can practice playing everything we're about to talk through. You can get all of those extra materials by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP594. Okay, so this song is played in the key of D, and it's really just 3 chords in this video. It's your 1, 4, and 5 chord. D, G for the 4 chord, and A for the 5 chord. So 1, 4, 5, D, G, and A. And the rhythm, which we're going to listen to here in a minute, but you'll notice this, when you listen to the rhythm, it goes from the 1 chord and does a quick change to the 4 and then back to the 1. And I talk about this quite a bit. When you're hanging out on a chord for a long period of time, this is just a classic sort of move, is to play its 4 chord. So in this case, we're playing a D chord. Instead of me just strumming a D chord, for example, I could do that, and some songs do that, but sometimes it's nice to go like this. And throw in the little 4 chord as like a little pivot chord, kind of a gospel move, and it just makes it a little more interesting. So kind of pay attention to that when you listen to the first part of this jam track. All right, so we're starting off by playing over that D chord, and remember it does a quick change to the G and back to the D. Now the first thing that I played goes like this. So let's talk about what's going on there. Let me just give you the breakdown first of what to play, and then we'll talk about where it's coming from. So I'm starting by barring on the 7th fret, and I'm playing strings 4 and 2 off of that 7th fret. One finger is barring it there. So it's like, and then I go like this, 4, 3, 2, and I hammer on these 2 fingers. So that's my middle finger on the 8th fret 2nd string, and my ring finger on the 9th fret 4th string. So when I play that, I'm hammering on those 2 notes there. I'm still only playing strings 4, 3, and 2 though. Now, what's going on there? First of all, that's my D chord, and this is my G chord. Remember, we do that quick change from a D to a G. When I say this is my D chord, I'm going to show you 2 ways to think about this. First of all, this little triad here is inside of your A shape, so this is getting into the CAGED system. So if I'm thinking about my D chord using the A shape, it looks like this, where my pinky is. That's how I play it anyway. That's barring there on that 7th fret. That's the A shape. Now, if I come up and I play that same bar but use my index finger on that 7th fret, and then I put my pinky up here on the 10th fret, now I'm in the next shape up, and then I'm in the G shape. So this is my D chord using the A shape. This is my D chord using the G shape. Two shapes out of the CAGED system. It's just a label. That's all it is. If you don't understand CAGED, just don't worry about it. It's just a way of labeling it. These are labels from the first position G chord and A chord that we learned. That's where the labels come from. So when I play that G shape, I don't use all 6 strings. There's no point in doing that. I just split it into 2 parts. I've got the top part of it or maybe that bottom part. I look at it that way. It makes it much easier. So let me show you something. So we're going to start off, we're going to kind of be living in this G shape. Let me show you some cool stuff, or just let me show you one cool idea that maybe you knew about and maybe you didn't, that we're going to use here in a minute. But notice I said I went between that 7th fret and the 10th fret on the first string, right? If you look at that as a boundary, this is a D triad, and this 3rd string here inside that triad is your D note. This is your D major pentatonic scale, pattern 1. So those pedal steel licks that I was playing are all coming out of this G shape. I'm just throwing that information out there because we're going to get to it and it's going to make a lot more sense as you start learning these licks. So the first thing that we played though was just strings 4 and 2 out of that triad. That's a harmonized 6. So that's another little connection point you can make. Okay, out of my A shape or my G shape, this triad here, it gives me a pretty harmonized 6 for the chord that I'm wanting, you know, that works great over the chord that I'm trying to play over. And then I can play the triad, and then it did that quick change to the G chord by just hammering on to those notes. Now what are those? Well, this is playing really strings 4, 3, and 2 out of my C shape. That's what that would look like if I played the whole thing. I don't need to play the whole thing though. That's the thing with this CAGED system stuff. It took me a long time to realize, oh, I can just play little pieces of it. You don't have to play all 6 strings or all 5 strings like you do in first position. You can just take 3 strings or even 2 strings and just play little pieces of it. And that's a really powerful little 1 chord to its 4 chord. So just think of that. You can do this anywhere. It's a really cool sound, and I always call that like the Keith Richards move. That sounds to me, that's something I hear Keith Richards doing quite a bit. That hammer on between the 1 chord and its 4 chord. And then I played this. All right, let's look at that. So that's that same harmonized 6, strings 4, 2, and 4, and then I came up here with my pinky and grabbed the 10th fret 2nd string. That's just another note from my G major pentatonic scale, pattern 1. So once you can see that major pentatonic scale in there, and you realize you've got this triad here, you can, that right there, if you learn nothing else, that piece of information right there can give you so much musical satisfaction, just being able to go. And just kind of bouncing around between your major pentatonic scale and a chord. Actually, 2 chords. You got the 1 chord and the 4 chord in that same little neighborhood. Okay, so after this, where my pinky is, let that be a marker, because we're going to switch places here with our hand. We're going to come up into this position. I'm going to go ahead and bar strings 1 and 2 out of that same fret, that 10th fret. So I use my pinky as sort of a visual, like little marker there. And what I did when I came up here is I went. Now what is that? Well, I'm still playing a D chord, remember that. So when I came up to here, I was picturing my D chord using the E shape. That's the next chord shape in the CAGED system. The CAGED system is linear in terms of the order that they follow. It doesn't, don't put too much stock into that and don't let that confuse you. So you've got C, A, G, E. And then the next one up is D. And so they all connect to each other like that. That's sort of like Legos. And that's what I love about being able to just sort of go from one to the, if you want to play up the fretboard or down the fretboard, you have these little things. And this is just a trick that I learned at one point. I can put my pinky there, reposition my hand. So now that you know we're playing the D chord using the E shape, this lick will make so much sense because look at my fingers. I'm just playing the first 4 strings out of that shape. So if you think of that, and we start with strings 1 and 2, then we go down to the 3rd string, right? It's just my D triad right there, the top 3 notes out of that E shape. But if I push that slightly sharp with a half bend on that 3rd string, I'm bending into my D sus 4 chord. And that is a pedal steel sound. So listen to this. Isn't that a cool sound? So it's really not that hard to do. You have to use your thumb with a little leverage behind the fretboard if you're having a hard time with that. Now, if you're on an acoustic guitar, that might be a little tricky depending on your string gauge. But anyway, that's what's going on. You can do this on an acoustic because it's only a half bend. Then you release it, and then you come down to that 12th fret 4th string. And then watch this. I came down to here and hit strings 4 and 3. Now what is that? Well, that's just 2 notes out of my D triad here. I just went back to where I started. So you can see that's all I did there. I went back into that G shape. And then watch this, like, isn't that cool? I love that. I use this lick all the time. I'm sure you've heard this in other lessons that I've done, but it's so easy to play because it's very symmetrical. So I'm borrowing the strings 4 and 3 on the 7th fret, and I do a hammer onto the 9th fret 4th string, then lift my finger, and then come down to strings 5 and 4, and do another hammer on to the 9th fret, this time on the 5th string. So all I'm doing is this. And this is the bottom part of my G shape. Or, it's not all, I'm not including the 6th string, but just strings 5, 4, and 3. But listen to this. Now, I love the sound of that so much because it's such just a powerful little harmony, and it lives off of, here's my A shape, here's my G shape, however you want to think of it. I think I actually connect that in my mind to the A shape. Isn't that a cool little sound that lives inside your G chord shape? And then remember this, you've also got your major pentatonic scale, pattern 1, in the same shape. So there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do in this little neighborhood here. All right, so now the song is going to switch and we're going to go to our A chord. And then it's going to hold there and then go down to the G chord. And we're just going to do this for a while. Back and forth between that A and the G. And so what did I play to get to that A chord? Check out this pedal steel lick. Now this is played out of my D major pentatonic scale pattern 1 that we've been talking about. Listen to this. Isn't that cool? Now all I'm doing for that is I'm barring with my pinky on the 10th fret strings 1 and 2, and then I'm using my middle finger to do a full bend on the 9th fret 3rd string, and I'm going to hold that bend and play the 1st string on that 10th fret, come back to that bent note on the 3rd string, and then hit the second string, back to that bent note again, and release. That's how it works. So you push up and hold the bend. This is a little tricky, but you can do it. So you hold it. Just practice that over and over again, slow. You just have to keep doing it until you know it's going to hurt your fingers. It will at first, but you'll get used to that lick. That's a really cool pedal steel lick, and you can see where it lives now. G shape, or pattern 1 of your major pentatonic scale. Now remember, I'm playing all of this over the A chord. And so I'm playing the D major pentatonic scale because that's the key of the song. So if you're ever lost or you're not sure what to do, you can always just go to the key of the song and play either the major pentatonic scale or the minor pentatonic scale. Depends on the sound you want. If you want to sound bluesy, you'd play that minor pentatonic scale. But if you want it to sound sort of happy or country, you play the major pentatonic. This works in a major key, by the way. If it's a minor key, you couldn't play the major pentatonic scale. But anyway, that lick sounds good and still works over the A chord because it's the key of the song still. And then I came down and played this. Now that's a little more intentional about the A, because what I'm thinking about is my A chord here using the E shape. It'd be like an A sus4 chord. And I'm doing that same kind of thing like we did here, right? But now I'm doing it for the A. So hopefully that makes sense. That's where those notes are coming from, is right out of my A chord using the E shape. And then the song goes to the G chord. So it goes from the A to the G. And what I played to get into the G was that same little hammer-on like we did before. And it's really a hammer-on between the D and the G here using the C shape. And it works with that D in there. Even though there's a G chord, you can play the D because it's the key of the song. And so you can get away with it. All right, I'm going to wrap up the part 1 video there. Now we have another whole half of this lead, so come join us at Active Melody for part 2, where we'll go over the second half. If you've liked this lesson or you've got something out of it, leave a comment below. I always appreciate that. It helps me big time, not just in the algorithm, but it helps me really gauge what's working and what's resonating. So if you've picked up any ideas or you've had any little light bulbs, please share those where you're watching this, and give me a thumbs up too. Those help as well. Even if you've got a question about something or you didn't like something, you can leave that comment as well too. It does help me, and so I read them all and I try and respond to them as best I can. All right, we'll see you in part 2, where we'll go over the second half.